invest massively in reindustrialization and technological leadership at global level. China is consolidating its power through strategic supply chains. And Europe adds new layers of bureaucracy and gold plating. Let's take the digital euro, for instance. Nobody knows how it works because it's not easy. Nobody trusts it because it leads to a digital prison. We have one of the largest markets in the world. We do not lack talent or economic capacity, but we lack economic common sense. Companies that create jobs and support European economics have the toughest access to predictability. We have 27 different interpretations of laws, complicated by the gold plating at European level and by administrative hurdles and proceedings that slow down investments. Citizens feel that, I can assure you. They feel it because jobs are uncertain, costs are ever higher, and there is a feeling that European economy is starting to lag behind. We need less fragmentation, not a two-speed Europe. We need less bureaucracy, more predictability for companies, and more support for those who produce, invest, and create jobs here in Europe. If we go on making things hard for ourselves, shooting ourselves in the foot, others will build the economic future instead of us.
Mrs. Henriksson.
Madam Chair.
Madame Henriksson. Merci, Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Vice-président de la Commission. Le marché unique est un atout majeur, mais nous n'exploitons pas pleinement son potentiel. Lors des réunions du Conseil, nous entendons très souvent les premiers ministres affirmer qu'il faut renforcer le marché unique. Mais lorsque les décisions concrètes sont censées être prises, nous constatons des divergences de vues entre États membres. Comment gérer ces difficultés au sein des gouvernements nationaux? On se pose la question, voulons-nous réellement une Europe plus forte, plus compétitive? L'Europe devrait effectivement être plus forte, plus compétitive. La réponse doit être affirmative. Et pour ce faire, nous devons être en mesure de nous renouveler, de renouveler l'Europe. Nous avons un marché unique de 450 millions de consommateurs, mais nous avons des entraves commerciales avec des droits de douane, 45%, 110% pour les services et nous...
Barriers. And today our companies too often face 27 different legal interpretations, national gold plating and unnecessary administrative burden. This creates uncertainty, hampers investments and prevents new jobs from being created. And it affects the daily life of many people. So now it's time to act, not just to talk. Thank you.
Grazie, Sinkevičius.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkevičius.
Colleagues, there's no doubt that the single market is one of the greatest achievements of the European Union. However, today you've heard lots of figures and how much of that potential of the single market, especially in these complicated times, we're not still using up. Each year, around 300 billion euros, around 2% of the EU's GDP, is simply not taken. And everything is related to growth, jobs, investment, earnings, the development of the regions. All of this is untapped potential. Why? The answer is very simple. Because we lack the elementary political will. When we are talking about the major job, I think, firstly, this is energy. But how can we speak about energy as a strategic sector when starting from planning, designing to the implementation of the project, there's a timeline of 10 years? If energy is the strategic sector indeed for our companies, why do we have different tariffs and uncertain prices and finances and access to capital today for companies, especially in the regions? it's practically mission impossible to borrow. The ECB investment banks present nice figures as to how they are investing each year, but the reality is that many companies lack access to these funds, and this is unacceptable. Finally, SMEs. How can we speak about competitiveness when 10% of their time, creativity is spent on bureaucracy? There's no doubt that we have to act, and for this we need political will. Thank you.
Well, it's time to come up with the goods here in the EU, you might say, but what exactly and for whom? In Sweden, every week someone dies at their place of work. Last decade, dozens. In Sundbyberg, 5 workers were crushed to death on a construction site, and you had 119 companies operating on that site. The workers who died had names, they had families, they had dreams, but the job killed them. These aren't accidents, these are foreseeable tragedies. We're talking about a problem with the market. Effectiveness, the lowest cost, the lowest price seems to weigh more heavily in the balance than the lives of people. This is kind of competitive cycle we're engaging in. The conditions, the salaries are barely sufficient to live on. And as for companies, they don't provide workers' rights, they don't take care of the environment, the climate, none of that. So what we need is a European Union that guarantees